Hello and welcome to another amazing episode of this Amusing Panda live stream where we talk all about War Machine and Hordes. As always, we have a bunch of really cool guests this week, and we're going to talk a lot about Hobby Time, which I know nothing about, which is why we have a lot of guests. So, as always, Cosmonauts, shut up, Beatnik. As always, joined by the one and only Alex Cosma, my Cosma. Again, it's my precious. Keep your hands off.
Hello, everyone. Hello, John. Hello, chat. I am super excited for this week's episode.
Me too. Let's get Charlie in here. Or no, let's get Charles Foster III, my old friend, one of my oldest War Machine friends. He's one of the first people that I interacted with on I think it was the Focus and Fury forums. Charlie, is that right?
That sounds right. Oh my gosh, that is a long time ago. Holy cow.
It is. I remember you talked so much smack to me. You were talking about, because I was talking about running light warjacks. It's a true story. I was talking about running repenters
and redeemers.
Yep, and redeemers, and you were like, that kind of stuff does not make it in my meta.
Nope. Vanquishers and reckoners, or get out of the way.
Yeah. We had a big argument, and I was all ready to hate you. And then I met you in real life, and I was like, oh, that guy's kind of sweet.
I think I had, like 4 games experience probably when I was on those forums.
What? You talk like you do everything.
I'm a young, impressionable person. What can I say?
It's all good. And then let's bring on Chris if we can. Chris, welcome back. It's been a few weeks. We missed you, buddy.
Well, thanks. Hey, y'all.
We got the Chris back in the house. Whole gang's back together.
Life was busy, but got a little calmer, so we're back on now.
Nice. Well, yeah, this is a fun squad. So we're going to be talking this week all about the hobby aspect, which Charles is the king of.
I wouldn't go that far, but I'm a hobbyist for sure.
Did you, Charlie? Did you send us some pictures that we could put on a slideshow while we're doing this of some of your models?
Did not, but I've got some I can steal out of Facebook probably.
Yeah, send them to me someplace. I'll get them loaded up. Also, Alex, I'm gonna have you host for a little bit. I've got to work. So I currently have an entire site down in Australia, and yeah, we lost a storage array. So happy day, everyone. No fancy bad Asian intros anymore. I guess I got us started. So I'll let you guys take it over, and I'll put it on mute for a little bit, but and I'll listen and try and jump in when I can.
I don't know who I should send these photos to, or if it's easier, I actually just have a painting folder on my Facebook. You guys can pull whatever you think looks cool out of there.
Oh, nice. Yeah, shoot that over to Keith. Just add him in the chat, and we'll get those queued up.
Okay.
All right. So diving in real quick, just before we dive into the hobby elements, the first element, just some quick news and announcements. Folks have been loving Dark Operations, the Cephalix's temporary upgrade to Renewed Faction, and Steamforged Games has announced that the same treatment is coming for Crucible Guard. So a lot of hard to find models will be making their way into 3D print, as well as some new rules updates for players who've been holding on to their old models and, got a good excuse to bust them out again. Also brand new this week, the World Team Championships Army lists are live. We're not bringing you hot takes this week, but I will go ahead and throw the link into the chat, unless YouTube chat often doesn't like links, so we'll see if that actually sends. Go ahead, give those a look, and hopefully at some point before the event we'll manage to squeeze out some more consolidated takes on these.
No, we definitely will, and then I'm going to give Chris and Alex homework of finding us some good guests that we could talk about them. Right now, longtime Muse on Minis fan Rinth, if you remember back in the day, he was a part of a lot of shows, even though he wasn't part of the show, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. He put together a list of model utilization for Dusk. So me being the nice friend that I am, I asked if he could do it for the rest of the factions. So we'd have that information. If anybody wants to volunteer to help out, I will hook you up and we can divide and conquer. I think that'd be great. But those kind of breakdowns are kind of interesting to see what the top players are playing. It says a lot about a model's inherent power and usefulness if there appears in a lot of lists, right, across the world. All right, I'm back to work. So
I had some spare time today, and I was trawling through the Brine Bloods list. Saw some interesting things in there. I saw no surgeons whatsoever. I'm not going to the WTC this year, but last year I was the only player running them. But speaking of army lists, we are actually reviving an old Muse on Minis favorite. So this is Off the Scrap Heap. So as a new segment ad at the front of the show, we are going to be taking a model that is maybe not getting as much love as it could, or something that has a deservedly bad reputation, but we want to shine it up and make it really go. So this week, we actually have a caster. Excuse me. And we were chatting about this before the show. Charles, I think you've become slightly tempted by our Off the Scrap Heap candidate, Orsus the Betrayed.
It is. Butcher is just a gorgeous looking model to begin with. One of the biggest things that influences my choices for like what I want to paint, what I want to play, is how cool the model looks. Doug Hamilton did the sculpt for Orsus, and it was just one of those things where I was like, I want to paint and play with this as much as I can. And Orgoth in general has just been kind of flat. They don't do a lot of crazy combat tricks. They're predictable in their threat ranges. They're very predictable in how they're going to react in most of the games on almost all the scenarios. So I feel like the people like who are out there winning with Orgoth now are really almost fighting an uphill battle. But one of the casters that doesn't see a lot of love is Butcher. We started talking about Butcher and Oriox kind of off screen for a little bit there, and I'm looking at it going, well, do I stop painting Dark Operations for Lock-up Mode and start painting some Orgoth, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, the faction is ripe for some innovation. I mean, there's probably going to be a balance patch that hits this faction in January in a pretty extensive way. Friend of the show, Ryan over at the Spell Rack, has been doing his Meta Mondays and doing breakdowns of the Orgoth win rate, and really highlighting in a mathematical way how much the faction right now is crutching on Horus. But that doesn't mean there aren't other play styles that are viable.
There are a lot of them, honestly. It's a fun faction. I really enjoy it. I play Orgoth right now, but I tell you, after the past 3, 4, 5 months, I'm with Charles. It's a flat faction. It's not exciting. There isn't a whole lot going on. There's room for improvement, and it's crutching hard and Horus. And it's a play style that I find a little bit boring after, multiple games of it. It does not change very much, kind of no matter who you're playing against. So I've been having more fun with, funny enough, Butcher and Kishtar, just digging into that toolbox a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I think Kishtar is some undiscovered country right now. But our producer, Keith, put together this candidate for Off the Scrap Heap. And I've had the privilege / misfortune against playing against Butcher a number of times. One of my locals ran him, and I've also been playing against Blake Hooper from the US WTC teams in a number of online leagues. He's been experimenting around with Butcher in his pair. One of the things that leads to the relatively flat Orgoth play style is they do have predictable threat ranges, and they're not necessarily coming to get you. They're often playing the catcher's mitt, trying to be receptive, using spells like Windstorm to make your opponent, dampen their range game and get you to come into them when they go and stand on scenario objectives. Butcher has a lot dictated by his limitations. So he has classic Butcher abilities. He's high speed because he's on a horse. He's got that Mat 9. good armor, medium-ish focus, medium-ish control area. He's got Berserk, Blood Quenched, so he racks up damage and armor every time he kills a model in melee. He has Homicidal Maniac, which he also grants to his jacks. At its current writing, Homicidal Maniac is almost like a weaker version of Overtake. But essentially, the conjunction of Homicidal Maniac and Berserk means with a bit of good micromanagement, it's possible to get Butchered to tear through an indefinite number of guys. Relentless Charge gives him Pathfinder, and the ability that really dictates his limitations in this faction that crutches on that Catcher's Mitt style is right here in Spell Ward. This model cannot be targeted by spells, which includes self-targeting spells like Carnage and Windstorm.
I hear those are good spells.
I hear those are faction-defining spells. And he can't do any of it. He also only gets one rack spell.
Yeah.
Going over the rest of his kit, he's got Fell Axe, his Lola substitute in this incarnation. No Weapon Master, but still base POW 16. If he gets into guys, Blood Quenched is going to mean very rapidly you're not even going to miss its absence. He's also got an offhanded Gore to restart those Berserk Maniac killing sprees with Beatback. Native spells, if you're not racking it, he has Eruption, so a powerful AoE, Hand of Destruction, damage buff, and Hunter's Mark. Now, this last spell is the big aspect that Keith wants to lean into, which is pulling out surprising threat ranges. Feat, super important, prevents models from being healed in his control area, and returns D3 plus 2 destroyed medium base or smaller models to play. Now, often what you'll see for Orsus the Betrayed is a lot of high value solos and people attempting to capitalize on bringing those back. The trouble with this is it often creates a bit of a timing mismatch between your feet and Orsus getting in there and, when your models are actually dying. So in a minute, we'll go over the complications, but any thoughts on this scrap heap candidate and his overall prospects?
Say there's one other feature for him that you might have missed on his weapon. He also has crit decap on that Fell Axe.
Oh, yeah.
So he's not just an infantry mulcher. You catch him napping, that cavalry charge is it'll wake you up on occasion.
Yeah.
And especially if we give him a nice reroll with Mr. Reaver Commander, who's always there. The other one that's weird, he's on a horse. What rule do you always have on cavalry?
Oh, that would be Unstoppable.
Well, that's one of them. How about reposition?
Also boosted to hit on charges.
How about reposition? Where is that?
He does not have that.
Randomly does not have it. Butcher only retreats forward. He is such an interesting and almost there caster in so many ways. The rack 1 just sucks. It feels really bad when everything else in the game has a rack 2, and it doubly sucks because you can't take the spells that you want to take in Sea Raiders with him. You are limited to a handful of cool upkeeps or an oddball choice. He may be the only caster. I was talking to Blake when he first came out. He might be the only caster that takes Unnatural Darkness, and it's not a joke. Because he lacks the ability. He doesn't want for anything because he can't take the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, that brings us into the spell rack option, which Keith highlighted as what's probably going to be your default choice, which is Redline. But we'll get into this list because it's highly idiosyncratic. Charles, any thoughts from you on this caster?
I think there's a bunch of ways to build them. It's when Keith brought this list up, it was just something that I was like, this is a very different approach because normally you see him, as you said, just swarming in solos. Therian Venic, the Vulcan Forge Masters, anything that gives him value on his feet beyond hey, this is just a grunt. So when Keith was like, hey, I've got this list, I want to pop it in for a second, we were looking at it, I was like, this is insane because you're you're no longer going to get bogged down in the mental game of when and where do I put what solo and what piece back on the table, versus, hey, feet, drop dudes on the table, move on. Let's just keep grinding.
Yeah. And to JRV, would he have been better off in Khador? I think that's open to debate. He certainly has a home in Orgoth, both in the forms that I played him against him in the hands of my local and in the hands of Blake. We are going to be looking at a very different list. So the spell to highlight here is Redline, which is essentially doubling down on Hunter's Mark. And lets Butcher turn heavies into real missiles without him having to commit. So between the use of arc nodes, and if you just have to hang back and play the long game with your opponent, you have an option to send a tyrant a good deal of distance. Something else worth observing, Butcher's personal kit, which is most of what he's banking on, screams mid to late game caster. So if he can get blood quenched even like 5, 6, 7 plus times, he essentially becomes invincible very, very quickly. And what this caster is looking to do is engage in the mid game and get as many casualties under his belt as he can, and then just be unmovable. And, essentially wherever he is, you cannot be. So let's look at the list. I mean, mentioning again that one of the things Orgoth does is, try and take a very reactive position and take command with Windstorm of the engagement game. We're looking at something very different. So when Keith showed this to me, he thought he would be trolling me, but I actually love this concept. So the basic list is one big battle group, which is super unusual. Most of what you usually see involves probably an Arcnode Jackal and then often a Garlcast or other high-value independent models. You'll often see Anathia in there and others. What we have here is 2 minimum cost Jackals. So Advanced Deployment, Mace, Clawed Fist. One, these guys start forward, while Bloodthirst gives you more overall threat range. These aren't really business models. Most of what you're using these guys for is their bodies. So you're looking at 26 damage boxes at 1217, which is a great stat line for 5 points. So these are models that start further up the board, and they take a good deal of commit to get rid of. So you're looking to run them up, get them on objectives, and make your opponent give you models to take them off. Beyond that, we have 2 Jackals that are just slight upgrades. So we've got duplicate Arcnode Jackals also running the Mace and Clawed Fist. Again, they're relying on their great body, and they're also giving you more vectors for Hunter's Mark. Next up, we have 2 Tyrants, and this is where you'll start to go really off script here. We're looking at a relatively cheap configuration: Relentless Charge, Harpoon, and the Ripper. So the Ripper is a decent statted weapon. Redline's going to take this up to POW 19. Mat 7's good. Harpoon, one of the biggest things Butcher wants to do is connect, often with the use of Hunter's Mark. So what these guys will let you do is, your opponent's playing KG with their models. They've got heavies in the back line. You run a Jackal up, apply Hunter's Mark to something that you have no hope of reaching, and then a Tyrant walks up and pulls it in next to an infantry unit, and suddenly Butcher can go to town. So these are pieces that make your opponent tread even more carefully, and the ultimate ambition there is going to be to surrender board space to you because they actually start to lose control of the threat game. And then this is where we get really exotic. So often you'll see Butcher armies loaded up with solos to get value. But again, you've got mission confusion because of the timing of the feat. What we've got here, 2 units of Reaver Skirmishers, 2 units of Strike Reavers, 2 units of Ulcor Barragers, 2 units of Witch Coven. So in this army, you're running 6 Jacks and 8 units. You are excellent for scoring. You have a lot of bodies coming down the board. The Strike Reavers give you the option to, like the min-cost Jackals, run forward and secure territory and make your opponent give you things to deal with scenario jamming models. But the other thing is, you actually have 16 like pretty good value ranged attacks coming down range. So Strike Reavers, every single one is wielding a hand cannon. Ulcor Barragers are also carrying range 12 POW 14 AoE guns. You're actually putting an astonishing amount of pressure on your opponent's squishier models to come and engage your Orgoth force. And one thing Keith mentioned is this army is meant to be treated as a template. I love the concept here of very forward scenario domination and making up for the lack of windstorm by applying a timer to your opponent, because you actually probably have more guns than they do. And even if they're fronting heavies, you know, how many turns do they like CRA POW 17s being dumped into them? It's a finite number of turns that they like that. So I think this is a really out of the box solution to a model that a lot of people struggle to get value out of. What do you guys think here?
Initial blush, I like where this is going. I've been a big fan of Battle Group Heavy Butcher since he came out. First off, I am a really big fan of what the heck is the name of his spell? Not Hunter's Mark and not Manifest.
Silence of Death.
Oh no. I'm forgetting.
Hand of Destruction.
Oh, Hand of Destruction.
I'm a fan of that spell, and initially when I was building him, I went a little down the rabbit hole of a very range-focused battle group with Butcher, capitalizing on that spell. I didn't find it was very good. The ranged options in Sea Raiders for your battle group tend to be pretty expensive or underwhelming, and there's kind of there isn't really a happy middle ground for that. So, right. But Hunter's Mark is something that, you know, there's only 2 threat range increases aside from Red Line in the army, and that is Oriax, poor Oriax, with his once per turn soul place for something that's within 5 inches of him, and then Butcher's Hunter's Mark, which you can double down on a Hunter's Mark if you so feel inclined, and that might be a small tweak I recommend to this list with Damian Korovnik, who can also spell slave that sucker out and leave Butcher doing what he loves doing, which is camping high and being a body. Existing. I like the idea of a bunch of medium bases. There's a couple of things I'm thinking of, but we'll get to. But just remember, like, Butcher's feat, I have always thought that the tough and the healing denial was the most important part. The recursion is cute, but they all come back at the end of the turn. So they don't even get to do anything the turn they come back. If they're in a bad place, they just die again, you know? I don't think, and I also, you know, piling on, I don't think that that the Sea Raiders have super excellent solos to the point where I am super jazzed to see them coming back onto the board, and I can't wait for another turn with these guys.
Right. Yeah. The big ones you'll actually miss and want back are like maybe Therian Vanek, but she's a bit of a generalist. Halexis, if you're bringing him. Reaver Commander's a support model. You know, as you say, Damian Korovnik, because his attached rule grants him faction. But it's hard to find somebody you're really in love with, you know?
Yeah, you can do... with the new box, everybody's talking about you can feed back Anathia. It's never going to happen. The timing is just not going to work out the way that you want it to. Anathia is still going to be alive by the time you pop your feed, or you're going to have nothing left on the board.
Right, yeah. And she's going to come back without a Barrow Ghoul or a Charnel Hound to command.
Feels bad. She's not a throwaway piece. Pardon, I like her, but that's not what we want to use her for. The Reaver Champion and the Execrators, yeah, those are actually pretty cool pieces and ones I might look at as well in a given Butcher list. Not this one necessarily, but they're also pieces that I would consider with him. Because they're high value, they're feedable targets, and importantly, his feat doesn't specify grunts. That's going to a recommendation I have. But my thoughts for right now.
Well, and that's a neat thing too, as you say. You know, if you treat this list as more a base formula for how do I solve Butcher's problems? Well, you can use Garlgast and a bunch of things, or you can be the aggressor at the range game, or play it at least competently and make your opponent feel some pressure to initiate in the mid game. This is a baseline template. The Execrators, who are also a great range supporting unit, substitute in perfectly for a unit of Strike Reavers. So if you find those hand cannons are, just not getting it done, bringing a bunch of Thunderbolts or a unit that can put out potentially even more firepower against softer infantry targets, these guys are great.
I kind of almost like them more than the Barragers, but I'm going to shut up. I want Charles to talk.
I mean, you've basically said all the things that I would have brought up for the most part. Barragers give that extra range. I've been looking through some of the WTC lists just as a little bit more inspiration, and I've in addition to Keith's list, I've already seen a couple things. I think David S posted one from the UK that features the Aberration. It also focuses on Anithia and the Rock Carriers versus this. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of different ways that you can build Butcher. The thing is, I think Anathia also just kind of opens a doorway for Butcher to be more focused, independent from his battle group. And I feel like Raveners always, every time I build a Butcher list, I can't get off of Raveners just because the monstrosity, being able to just, hey, we're not doing anything, I'm going to dump focus here, and I'm now ready to rock the rest of the game. That Ravener is going where I wanted to. So it's one of those things where I just think Butcher looks so fun to build that he has enticed me by himself to come back to the faction and give it a second look. Where I have been on Crix and I've been on Sea Raiders and Southern Creels and I've been on Dark Operations for the last 6 months, going back and forth between everything. And because of this discussion, I was like, where is my Butcher? Where is it?
Yeah. And it's, the great thing is you're not necessarily wedded to anything here. It's super easy to shave down points. Maybe I cut some basic jackals. Maybe I go down to one arc node. I don't necessarily need double ambushers. There's a lot of room to tailor here. And as you say, with the Ravener in particular, Butcher is often just going to have a lot of turns where he just wants to dump focus and wait till it's his moment to shine. Exelon Nostilla is a neat model, but I think the big thing, that a lot of people are bringing Garlgas for is to have a magnet that centralizes the game and demands an answer so that Butcher can go and play cleanup. Aberration is a much more economical version of the same thing, with his ARM 17, 36 boxes, impervious flesh, and the option for vision. This is a model that just loves to plot up the board like a doofus and make things attack him. And he always demands a massive resource commit, which just cues Butcher up to play the game he wants to play.
Yeah, I think Aberration is the boogeyman right now. When you're playing against the game, people are miscalculating the amount of resources it takes to either take him out or not. So they'll either, hey, I'm going to dump my entire Phantasm activation just to make sure I get this one model off the table, or I'm going to, I thought that throwing a unit of cats was going to be enough to get in there and do it. It usually is, but occasionally, just if you come up one or two short, that Aberration is just there and it just goes back to town on everything. You can also just get one shot almost by a Phantasm. I had a buddy who was playing a game with Chase. He crit and there with the boxes. I was like, oh, that was 32 to the 1. Okay, sure. Seems reasonable.
Oh man. Yeah, I think that's a great addition, and it's super easy to find the points here to get that in. Again, this is very season to taste. Tyrants or some jackals, or it's very easy to get there. Another thing that you get by the options you recommended as substitutions, Anithia's bringing with her at least 2 war beasts. So essentially, if you're doing variations around this, any substitutions you make are generally likely to keep that oppressive, no, you really have to run me out of an unbelievable number of models before I'm ready to surrender even the option to score a single scenario point.
Yeah, her giving out Shield Guard to her battle group and just kind of dirtling around near Butcher even. There's just so many ways I think that release changes the dynamic of list building, that it feels like you can almost pull Orgoth off the scrap heap in just general, because it just opens so many list building ideas. I think you may even start seeing Oriax as an actual hey, let's consider this now.
Yeah. Well, that was Oriax will maybe be a good suggestion for a future off the scrap heap, because I know this is somebody that's been enchanting you, and I think he's a neat caster. Having a new super solo and battle group that he doesn't even have to manage may be a really compelling ad here.
As I said, you guys are tempting me. Who knows what I'm going to lock and load. I was 100% locked in on Dark Operations 2 weeks
Oh,
ago.
man.
Having that I like looking over all the new tools they're getting, it's like, okay, my brain starts playing around a little too much on my app, and I'm like, all right. And then we had this discussion, and now I'm like, oh, all right, I got to unpack. This move needs to end so I can get back into painting on these models.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of the point of off the scrap heap, is to reinvigorate love in the game. And like, one of the first things that happened on Amusing Panda was John's breakthrough in taking the Eidolon off the scrap heap. The model that everybody wrote off like, oh yeah, you build it like a traditional heavy, like it's supposed to piece trade with other heavies, but you never play it because that's bad. Like, okay, well, what if I just play it differently? Really, really going to town on a model that's been overlooked is a great way to reinvigorate love of the game and see past the present orthodoxy that kind of settles in and maybe stagnates things a bit.
Did John see the WTC list that's spamming Eidolons with Hazard?
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. We'll have to ask him.
I don't think I missed. I think I missed that too.
I'll link it to you guys. That's a good one. I'm keeping an eye on that list.
Yeah.
You guys probably going to dominate. I'm just
3 Eidolons, Israfil, and a Spectre, and then season other stuff to taste with Hazaroth.
Is that guy's name Peter by chance?
I can't remember.
Because we definitely did some chats along those lines. So pretty fun.
If you haven't had a chance, to anybody out there that's actually watching or listening, if you haven't had a chance to go check out the WTC list, definitely do. There's some really cool stuff that people have designed their lists around. I'm very excited to see what the WTC has to offer in terms of like what comes out on top. Oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing the data breakdown on what's winning and stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the only thing I care about is America has to win, and Australia cannot win. I can't handle the Aussies winning again, and nobody in Europe, we can't let them win either, just because it's just like a rule. I didn't make up the rules, but that's a rule. So yeah, that's what I care about.
All right. Well, returning to the note and having the move done and being able to unpack and start painting again. Charles, you wanna talk to us about the hobby aspect of the game and really being a painter here?
Yeah, sure. I think the best way to do it is actually probably start off by just kind of breaking down painting in general. I think there's like 4 categories that people kind of fall into in terms of like painting. You've got the beginner who's just super excited. They just got their first chance to like play tabletop. They're trying to figure out what to do to get into the hobby of painting and getting beautiful models going. Then you've got more so like the person who's like, hey, I'm starting to learn techniques. I'm starting to see blogs. I'm starting to see these painting people, what they're doing around me, all these cool super painters that you see winning awards at like LVO, Nova Open, and so forth. And they're just kind of like, I want to learn one thing at a time, kind of build up those skills. You've got the guy that's like the master of 3 feet, which is what I kind of hope to fall into, where I paint well enough that if you're 3 feet away from the table, you'll think those are the best painted models you've ever seen. And then when you pick them up, they don't look so good, but that's okay. And then
I've got some of the 3 foot game to show off here later.
Yeah. And then you've got the people in the 4th category are like on the other level. They're the streamers, the people who are chasing down golden demons, crystal brush winners, Nova Opens, the guys that are like on the next level, way beyond the skill set of mortal men and women like us in this chat. The guys like Sergio Carvalho, any of those guys out there that are chasing golden demons and those master painting awards where they're like, have you seen this model? Chris Shirke just won the Nova Open, a guy that has been grown up Vader, who grew up in the St. Louis area painting around me. And it's crazy because I remember I've seen something that he painted 20 years ago. It was in front of me. AK and I were looking at it at a Warfare weekend in 2010. And then, now he's winning Nova Opens with the best painted model you've ever seen. And you're like, So did you kill a wizard, drain their blood, sprinkle it through a unicorn horn, and then like just wave it at it until it was painted? Like, how do you get to that level? So, yeah, I think we could probably start with like the beginner hobby. That is the guy who just walked into the game store, and this is the thing I love about tabletop miniatures. When you walked into a game store and you look over and you see two people playing a tabletop game, it doesn't matter what it is, Malifaux, War Machine, 40K, whatever, Conquest, it doesn't matter. It's whatever gets you vibing. You look over and you're like, those are awesome. Those people look like they're having the best time of their life. I want to get in on that. How do I start playing this game? How do I get into miniature hobbying? And they're like, well, it's not that hard. And usually people sell you the ease of what painting is before it's possible, before you've ever done it. And so you've got your first person who's just starting to get into the hobby. And they're like, I don't understand where to go for brushes. I don't understand what kind of paints I need to buy. Do I need primer, clippers? What are all these things that I need to make beautiful models happen? And so the easiest way to like get into it, or when I get somebody who's in our local game store or somebody that I run into that's like, hey, I want to get into painting, I always tell them, when you go to your paint, don't buy a Citadel or one of those expensive paints right away. Take the model you like, get some cheap brushes, and try and paint something. Get whatever paints around you. That's usually, back in the day, it was Army Painter. I don't know if they're still one of the cheaper brands of paint because they've come out with so many different products and they kind of scale with like speed paints and stuff like that. But like, it's a lot to focus on these days because the tools that are available are so much wider than they were when like I got into the hobby.
Right.
You know,
yeah, it's gone from being a niche industry to being like, oh, maybe there's, a few thousand people that are interested in this, and there is what there is, to now it's like, no, really, there's options that really let you tailor to your price point, to your experience level, and on and on and on.
I got into painting back in 2003, and when I walked into my game store and I saw them playing models, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pull the trigger. I think I bought a Dark Angels like big box in the 3rd edition of 40K. And at the time, I was
going to ask how old you were when it bit you.
Yeah, I think it was right around like my senior year of high school. And I walked in, and like when you walked into the store and you were like looking at the paint shelves, like the things in front of you were so limited. There was only GW clippers, there was only GW brushes, and there was only Citadel paints. And Citadel paint range was so much smaller back in the day. The black pots with the blue labels on it,
and the screw off
way less. Yeah, it was so small. You didn't have washes, you didn't have inks. You did have some inks. But it wasn't like the 400 colors. Now, when you walk into a game store, like if you walk into a fully fledged tabletop game like Mox Boarding House or Golden Rhino Games, like when you walk into those stores, they've got 6 different paint ranges. They've got 30 different basing materials that come in pots. They've got Pro Acryl, HK, they've got Citadel, P3, Army Painter, Vallejo. Like the painting and tools that are in front of you is so overwhelming if you don't know where to start. And then you also look, the world is a lot smaller in painting. The way you learned to paint back in the day is you would walk into a store and John would be sitting over there next to Jeff, and they'd be like, hey, do you want to paint green? Here's 3 steps to painting green. And that's your resource. That's how you learned to paint, was the guys that were sitting around the table talking to you. It was also really cool to bond like that. Now, if you're getting into painting, there's Twitch, YouTube, Monument Hobby does a daily stream, Sergio Cavallo, Patreon. There's all these guys out there that are throwing endless amounts of knowledge at you, and they all come up with cool looking stuff. But if you're like, hey, I just got Blood Angels, all I want to do is play Blood Angels, or I just got my first Cygnar army, I want to paint blue, how do I do this? The resources around you are a little overwhelming, so I always tell people, start small. It's a journey. It's all about having fun along the way, but start small, grab the basic colors you want, grab some cheap brushes. Your first army will never look amazing unless you're a savant. There are some people out there that are, and they are insane impressive. They draw circles around me, and they've only been painting for like 2 years. But like, everybody has a starting point, and I wish I still had my first model. My first Dark Angels green dude it looked like Swamp Thing. It was not pretty.
Oh yeah.
Like, you could have stuck like a Christmas present on it. It could have been Christmas Marines. It was just, everybody has that one. And our old game store used to have the Wall of Shame, and I wish we still had it, because everybody would put like their first model up on display. So when new painters came in, and instead of having these expectations like, holy crap, did you see what one golden demon? Instead, you'd have, a corn berserker that is bright orange and you call it the Great Pumpkin King. And you're like, have you seen the Great Pumpkin King? This is what it looks like to start in the hobby realm. But what happens though is that when you start with your basic brushes, you kind of start feeling like, oh, I can kind of figure out how to thin out my paints. You start building techniques and you start seeing these resources out there. You start that learning period of like, all right, I've had my first Archangel's army on the table, or I've had my Khador army on the table. It looks like complete butt, but it's painted, and I feel good because it's painted. Painted models roll better. Then you start learning these techniques. You're like, all right, well, I need to get something new, and I want to start working on getting that craft a little bit. I want to learn dry brushing. I want to learn shading. I want to learn how to use washes better. I want to get something that's outside of that like basic color scheme, and then go into like highlights and glazes and all these different things. And it's a really cool period because painters at this point either find something that they love and that becomes their style, or they find somebody to commission paint for them so that they don't have to worry about it.
Right. Well, it's interesting, because there's the same thing on the gameplay end where like, the strategic technological sophistication of, how the game is being played right now is like crazy high relative to, some points in the past. But, one of the advantages of this is the know-how is actually out there in your community too. So, it can be shockingly easy to come up to a high level of play after some, experience with the lessons of the masters or whatever it is, and I remember, the bug bit me at age 10. I had my first model up until I moved to Arizona. It was also a Space Marine that I was doing like a Dark Angels successor chapter. Guy was silver, had like one green shoulder pad on which I'd like free-handed the world's worst Roman numeral 2. And like his face was a splotchy mess. The bolter was red and so were parts of his chest. And you want to get people the experience of like holding a model and doing the act of painting. But what are some techniques that can launch somebody from baby's first Christmas ornament mini to, painting a competent army? Because there are some things where like the tribal knowledge is out there and these things are not that hard to get a hold of.
No, so back in my day, as I said, like when I first got into painting, the easiest way to do it is to get somebody who's in your local area. So I'm an advocate hugely of local paint nights. Like go up to the game store, hang out, take a model with you, and just sit with somebody who has knowledge that's better than you. Gaming is awesome because it always, no matter what you're doing, if you're painting, playing, or doing something related to gaming, if you're surrounding yourself with people that have a higher skill cap than what you're sitting at currently, it's always easy to ascend that skill higher and higher. So when you sit next to a guy who has, beautiful painted army and you're talking to him about it, they're like, hey, how can I get my dry brushing to look a little bit less chalky, or how can I get a glaze that's going to be a little more consistent, or a wash that's going to work good on certain highlights. Having a person in your local store that's got that experience and can show it to you like firsthand is my favorite. That's just the way I like to learn. I would say while it's a great resource, there are lots of videos out there that show you like from start to finish. Like you've got painting videos from Patreon, like Sergio Carvalho or Juan Alamantrias. Like they do videos where they literally will show you step by step on how they do it. Their ability to thin and control paints and control the tools that they're using is something that doesn't translate well because it's just kind of them doing a video. So it sets a kind of almost like a false expectation of what my model should look like when it's done versus like what it did look like when I got done with it, because it won't be exact.
I mean, they're the modern version of the heavy metal, Games Workshop catalog in 1995.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, they're the new age of like Bob Ross and stuff. Like you're painting along with them. And I don't know if you've ever tried to paint a Bob Ross painting. I don't have pretty little trees in a mountainscape. I've got a gremlin and what looks like a big blue splotch with no. They're like, what is that? It's a Jackson Pollock interpretation of a mountain.
It's a power sword. Can't you see the lightning?
Yeah. Ride the lightning. I think that like the best way to like learn the craft though is to just try something new. Like pick something and do something you haven't done before. So like if you're starting off in the hobby world and you have like just say you've got like a Gravedigger army. And you're like, for this army, what I really want to focus on is clean line work or good base coats. So you do your basic steps, like, hey, I want to work on blues. And then for like, maybe you pick like a Warcaster or a character Warjack, and you're like, hey, to take it to the next level, I want to try something new. I'm going to try colored inks in my metals so that I get different looking glazes and reflectivity in my metals. Like, there's always something you can challenge yourself with. And I think like trying something and then trying something new to just keep trying new things expands your ability to learn new skills in hobbying in general. New non-metal metallics are a thing that are everywhere in competitive painting. Golds, silvers, where you don't use any metallic paints at all. You use just yellows to do golds and browns to create that depth, or blues and whites to create silver metals, has something that has terrified me as a painter. I never had done it. And then last year when Crix came out, I said, that's it. I'm going to try and do my Crix with non-metal metallics. I've never done it before. I'm just going to get over the phobia of it, and I'm just going to go for it. And there are some models that I have probably repainted like 4 or 5 times to get it to that place where I'm like, hey, this looks good. There's one of them now going across the screen. That one did not make it. That one's been repainted. But it's one of those things where like, if you're afraid to try something new in painting, it'll limit your scope and your skill set. Whereas like if you just pick one thing, anytime you sit down to paint on anything and you're like, hey, I'm going to challenge myself with this one thing, like you can learn these skill sets quickly and easily across a bunch of different models.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds a lot like coming up in the game store, somebody who's new to the game. You know, you got to give up like that, you know, pie in the sky vision in your head that like, I'm going to come out and be, you know, a savant at this. Like almost everybody's going to take practice. So what you got to do is go element by element and be refining your game, refining your play. And like, okay, today I am just making sure I don't get scored out on top of 2. And it's like, you know, I've got this new unit, you know, like damn the past. I'm going to let it all hang out. And today we are going to get some good highlights in. Or today I am going to, you know, actually manage to control my palette enough to do real dry brushing.
Yeah. And I think that also, in addition to just kind of trying to challenge yourself for one new thing every time you sit down to paint, maybe try a tool that you've never used before. For instance, what are these things? The verdigris is a new thing that was not readily available prior to recent times, where like, hey, I'm going to take my brass and just put this verdigris across it, make it a nice, beautiful patina, and it just sits in there and it just does all the work for you. It's like, oh, I never would have thought to do that, and just look at how much depth and character it adds to a paint job. Yeah. So like, being open to trying new experiences. When I first sat down and started painting, a model would take 4 paints: blue, green, black, red, whatever it may be, whatever 4 paints I had, and then lead belcher or whatever bolt gun gray or pig iron that was in front of me. And okay, that model looks done. It's great. We're good. We'll throw sand at it and call it based. And now I think like when I sit down and do a model, I'm surprised if I'm like less than 30 paints on a model. You're like, oh, that took 20. That was I feel like I'm cheating, and maybe I didn't put a highlight in there I was supposed to.
Yeah. Oh man. So I'm curious, Chris, when did you get bit by the oh, hold on, I gotta go. There's a cat fight. I'll be back in a minute. Oh, no. You guys brainstorm the hobby.
Oh, I'd love to. The funniest thing is I got bit by the hobby very, very long time ago. Battle Masters was my gateway drug into the hobby overall. If anyone remembers that board game from the mid-90s.
That does put a date on it for sure.
That was my brother and I would unfurl that definitely not table-sized mat in our family room because it's the only place that would fit on the floor, and we would play it for hours. And I can't remember if we played it right It was Games Workshop, so probably not, but who cares? It was still a lot of fun.
The experience.
But the funny thing is that this is why it's kind of fun to be in this cast and on this one is I don't like painting. I hate it. I'm not very good at it. It's something that I find less fun. It's not very enjoyable for me, and it is difficult for me to find enjoyment in it. But it's something I want to improve at. So I've challenged myself over the next 12 months to actually improve at it, try out some new tools and techniques. And I got to say, as you pointed out, Charles, the industry has grown exponentially since when I first started and decided I absolutely hated painting, because I remember the blue label black top screw cap Games Workshop paints. That's what my 3rd edition Dark Eldar were in, and they were pretty much entirely dry brushed. And you know what? I actually just found them like today, and they weren't awful. I could definitely look at them and say, yeah, this isn't great, but it's not. I don't have a Christmas tree ornament, so I can at least hang my hat on that, or not. Don't have a tree to hang it on. But one of the tools that I've found to help me kind of get past my own challenge with it is Army Painter's Speed Paint 2.0 line is something that I started dabbling in. And it was pretty cool how fast I was able to pick up the techniques, start actually enjoying it and having some fun with it. And also recognize the strengths of it and the limitations. And I did that like within a month. Like, I thought that was crazy that I went that far that fast. I just thought, I'll just slap this on there, call it good enough. And by the end of it, despite myself, I only painted one model thus far, but I found myself really enjoying it.
I really like the speed paints and contrast. I think that those are one of the tools that if you were to tell me back in like 2000 that, hey, we're going to have highlights and shading and in a mid-tone come out of one paint bottle on a model, I would have been you're full of... I remember when Nuln Oil came out and the industry kind of went... People were like, that's cheating. You can't do that. Like, you are not a real painter if you use it.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, it's one of those things where it's definitely, like, gone and evolved. I have to ask, though, since you're like, I'm not a big painter. I want to get back into painting, and I want to make sure that I have, like, a way to do it. Have you set yourself, like, up, like, hey, I'm going to spend time, like, 30 minutes a day painting? Or is it like, hey, I'm going to paint one new model by Saturday of next week?
I found that I didn't give myself like hard time frames or deadlines or anything like that. It was more, I'm going to put stuff on and I'm just going to do it in stages. And then we're going to let it sit and see where it is and see how I like it. And we're just going to keep, it was more an incremental, like just do it a piece at a time. Like, hold on a second. I have him right here. I actually painted up Carver as he's entirely speed paint. Like that guy's 100% Army Painter speed paints.
That's awesome.
And I painted him, like, I painted his legs, I painted his face, I painted his cloak. The method I used was the slap chop method. I wanted to try it out and see how it worked. Strengths of it, I realized that for fur, it was awesome. For armor, it's so-so. And for cloth, it's not really where I wanted it to be. But I learned that really quickly, and I was able to kind of pivot on the fly while I was doing it and improve it. So that's been one that I've had a blast with. But really what helped me was just setting up a little space. I mean, I have an OttLite desk lamp that I got at a Joann's clearance going out of business sale for $20.
Oh, yeah. that was a golden window for aspiring painters. There is so much random hardware. Like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I had a magnifying light? Wouldn't it be nice if I had a, nice neutral adjustable white light? Wouldn't it be nice if I had blah, blah, blah? Like, man, that was a golden period to have like a small amount of liquid cash to expend on the hobby.
It's funny. I didn't have a ton, so I limited myself, and I just said, I'm just going to get a tiny little thing. I set up a little station at my dining room table. I'm using like an old clay pot that I got from a fancy yogurt 5 years ago that I've just been hanging on to as a water pot. And I just had a few contrast paints, not many. Really kind of the idea was just keep the threshold low. You know,
Mhm.
I think that every gamer, every nerd can get the idea of, oh, I want to do this thing. I have this really big idea. Let me go spend $500 on this really big thing that I've never done before.
Right. And
Not
I mean,
a good idea.
I think that's the import of so much of what you're saying, Charles, is like, you don't have to drink the ocean in one go. Like,
Yes.
there's a lot you can have in terms of hobby stuff. And like one thing, you know, when you're watching a tutorial online that is doing like a non-metallic metals, like in-depth paint, you're not necessarily seeing that this guy is almost certainly looking at this through magnification.
Nope.
But if you want to have a model that makes the jump from baby's first Christmas ornament to being the master of 3 feet, you know, it's not that big a cash investment, and you can do it a little bit of time, like a little bit at a time as it grows with your skill.
I usually when I find like a new paint line launches, like this is the way that I would get into it. So for instance, the most recent paint line I think that launched is actually the new P3 line. So what I would do is when I would have a model that I'd have a specific set of colors that I wanted to do, where I'm like, hey, I want to focus on the like, dark grays, dark blues, I'll go get those couple paints, and then I'll just use what I want out of those colors. And then the next time I go to the game store, I'm like, oh, well, maybe I want to do red on something later, and I'll pick up 1 or 2 paints at a time. And I'll just grow my collection over a long period of time, which is actually how I ended up getting, I think I have the entire Pro Acryl line now, which is my pretty much go-to paint for the moment, where I just go up to the store and I'm like, hey, I'm going to get these 5 colors that I need for a project. And then the next time I go up there, oh, this is the next pot in the rack. This is the next pot in the rack. And here's the next pot in the rack. It supports my local game store, but it also just fills out my painting arsenal. And so after a long period of time, painters grow their tools. So when you see people like one of my favorite guys to watch is like Ninjon, when he goes on to, like, you see behind him in his house this massive wall of painting tools, a studio light above his head, airbrushes over in the corner. It's just like, whoa, do I really need all of that to just paint some blood angels? And it's like, no, you just need like 4 or 5 paints and a little bit of time. I think for me personally, when I get to start a project, like when we were talking about like new people getting into models, set yourself a goal, just like a small thing to get you enticed with painting. Like, hey, I'm going to paint for an hour a night. Or my favorite thing to do is actually tell myself like a limit of time I'm going to have on this model. So I'll pick up a model and be like, all right, this model I'm only going to give myself 30 minutes on, and whatever it's done, that's it. That's the model. And you can give yourself more time, but I'm trying to condense like challenges. So like my Orgoth that I'm painting, or was painting, I literally set myself no more than 30 minutes for anything that's on a 30 millimeter base, an hour for anything that's on a 45 millimeter base, 2 hours for a 50, and then 120. I'll give myself 6 hours. Thankfully, I haven't painted a Garlgast, and I'm going to avoid any illicit runs one just so I don't have to.
Yeah.
I'm
coming up on
that one. It's a beautiful model.
I've done so many 120 millimeter base models, and they grind on you because you really feel like, hey, I've got everything done, and then you find like a rope or you find a small detail, which on a monstrosity or a gargantuan or colossal and stuff like that, it's not a small detail. It's like the size of a head or a weapon or something. It's not something you're like, I just painted an Abyssal King for Chuck Ellsworth. And it was just one of those things where I was looking at it and I was like, all right, I think I got everything. And then you're like, wait, there's like 300 more barnacles I haven't done on this one arm.
No, they're literally speed bumps, man. So
it's a special kind of hell.
Last year I had to paint, as I was painting for WTC, I had to paint 20 Marauder crew plus attachments.
Yep.
And
that looks good, by the way.
I also had to paint 1 battle brig. Painting the 20 Marauder crew plus attachments took me the same amount of time as painting the brig.
Yep.
That's an 80 millimeter model, and there's ropes, and you're turning it around like just as you're ready to put the finishing touches on, and like, oh god, from this angle, all the ropes are primer black. All right, now we got to start layering up again. So,
for some people that don't know, I've actually worked with Privateer Press, and I worked for Steamforge Games when they did the acquisition. So I was there for around a year at Steamforge Games. one of the discussions that we had, Matt and Rich, the two guys that are running the company for Steamforge, love War Machine. They've been playing it competitively. They love painting it. They love doing everything. And it's awesome that they got into it. And they were like, what would be some ideas if you could change one thing about War Machine? Or they just throw some ideas around. Like, what are things that you would hope that we could do? And I sat there and talked to him. I was like, I think honestly that the models have become a little over complex than what we wanted. And Matt Wilson was trying to rein in some of it, but there's still like the aesthetic in his brain that he's built up for like 25 years. And it's okay to let some of the rivets go. It's okay to be a little bit less rivets. So talking to Matt, Hart, and Rich about some of the different designs that they had with like, what do we want to do with the aesthetics and how the universe wants to continue, I voiced my opinion being that, hey, I think right now, with the way the world is set up and how people's attention spans and the need for immediate immediate satisfaction come into play, that Marvel Crisis Protocol is actually, and Shatterpoint are kicking ass of all the tabletop games. I think that right now, if you sit down with a new miniature and you're holding it and you're looking at it and you're like, hey, if you can't take this model and put speed paint on it or sit down and paint the model in an hour or less, you're actively losing your customers. Just because it's one of those things where it's like, I want to get the model painted. I'm so excited. I want to get this onto the table. So how do I get this onto the table and play with my friends as fast as possible with a fully painted model? And so they started working heavily on pulling back some of the detail work so that it's not as bad as it was originally. So I think the first model that they did it on was the Necro Harvester, where it's probably got only half the rivets that it had on the original model. And it's still a lot of rivets, right? But like, if you look at Crix or Army aesthetics and you see these little details, they were becoming overwhelming. And I think GW, in their quest to like find and challenge the hobbyists to like make better, cool looking models, they're going in the opposite direction, I think, of what hobbyists are hoping for, which is a more condensed model that has less detail on it so that it's painter friendly and new person friendly. I just saw the new like Chaos Swords and I'm like, holy cow, I'm excited to look at something like that. I think it'd be super fun to paint it. But then you look at like it coming from a new person who's like, I'm going to buy my first army. And you're like, this is not a Space Marine. It is not a very basic shape with basic armor. Right. This is a very complex thing. So I like War Machine though, because War Machine gives you a little bit of a challenge on your miniatures. It makes you feel invested in what you're doing, and simple paint jobs can be really good looking on them. Yeah. Speed paints really show nicely on a lot of the War Machine models. Contrast paints work just as well. So when you get into hobbying, like the barrier for overcoming, oh my god, there's so many rivets, is a lot less on newer War Machine models than some of the old ones.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's something that really shows in your showcase of models too, is that you're often willing to let a lot of the fine details go, or like graded surface transitions. I mean, this is my biggest gripe with I think probably the Chimera and the Dusk and the Orgoth paint scheme for the studio, is that they're super detailed, but it's very easy to lose the model profile in the details, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So the first set of models painted from Mark IV were all done by Eric Swinson for the most part and Josh Berman. They're all using non-metal metallics, and so one of the things like Steamforge Games has done a great job is they've simplified their paint jobs intentionally. They want it to feel almost like the old style Games Workshop, where you look at a model and when you look at it, you're like, I could probably do that. I can probably get to that level. Yeah. Versus like the Privateer, like they would have their studio painters and they were all amazing. Every single one of them. Matt DiPietro, Meg Maples, Jordy Hicks, Dallas Kemp, Roy, Brendan Roy. Like those guys are just on another level. When they paint stuff, it's like watching a Harry Potter or a wizard movie. You're like, presto, and there's this painted model, and you're like, how did you do that? And they're like, oh, it's simple. And then they start speaking in tongues when they're trying to explain it to you. And it's like, I understood none of that, but it looks good. I appreciate what you did there. So you'd put those studio models in a case, and yeah, when you go to a convention hall, they look so good. But as a hobby person, when you're trying to like find your way in, you're like, I can't do that. There's no way. I need like 30 years of experience before I can paint like somebody who just came out of like the New York School of Arts or something over there.
Right. Yeah, that was also part of the secret of the enchantment of the old Games Workshop model catalogs and the heavy metal team. Is, you know, like the techniques were a lot less sophisticated in the 90s and 2000s, but they were still there. And part of the magic of that like GW model line, and what definitely allowed for a lot of draw in, is these were painters that were actually deliberately painting beneath their level of capability to make it accessible and to make it visually pop very, very quickly. And I mean, just returning to sort of the model's visual profile. I mean, I have a booty boss here. This model has a lot of different surfaces, cloths, etc. I'm not a master painter. I really do shoot for the 3 feet thing.
That's so
but
good looking though.
when we go to his like back and stuff, you know, there's, and I do this a lot in my Storm Legion too, or like my Scorn before that, like, you know, I really wanted the model to speak for itself, and you know, there's a lot of details that I'm like, you know, the visual impact of these all being like sort of background or muted is not, you know, it's not that costly. Mostly what I want the model to do is have its visual profile speak for itself. And actually, if I try and pull out too many of these details, it gets washed away in color transitions, and like at an eye's glance the visual profile makes less sense. Like when I was doing my Scorn, which I sadly no longer have, you know, there's loads of ornate trimming and recesses and like gold here and there, and like we're going to do these
so much
suckers.
filigree.
Yeah, we're going to do these suckers bone white, and we're going to give it a wash so that the details like pop. But we're not going to do these ornate color transitions, and we're going to let the white and the Scorn flesh and the the purple cloth and the gold and silver for the weapons speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's a great effect.
So for those that are kind of like listening in that aren't familiar with it, there's the concept of what they call the master of 3 feet. When you're painting a model, typically you're pretty close up on it. You're literally sitting like this, just kind of painting. You've got a brush in your hand. And you're like, hey, I'm doing this detail work. I'm doing this detail work. The problem is you're painting at this ratio and aspect of like, I'm only 6 to 7 inches away from the model, versus like when you actually see the model on the table, you're holding it out to about 3 feet. You're standing above the models, and that's where the detail matters. You can waste so much time as a new painter trying to perfect the perfect blend and the perfect glaze and the perfect, you know, eye, and getting everything 100% right. But if you honestly just put 1 or 2 things and then make it so it looks great from 3 feet away, your models will give you so much more enjoyment, and you won't feel as fatigued while painting as a new hobbyist because you're not putting as much effort into trying to make a master model. Right. If your goal is to eventually go down that road and become one of those extreme painters, definitely try it, but don't do it for an army, because that's where you get burnt out and you have like 4 painted models and then a sea of primered models.
Right. Yeah. So Chris, you know, for you and your hobby journey, where are you between, I mean, obviously not beginner, but between beginner all the way up to, you know, the Golden Demon Chasers? Where are you, and where do you see like the next steps you really want to grow into, or what do you want to add to your repertoire?
Oh, bottom 10%. I mean, I'm not quite beginner, but I'm not, again, like I was telling Charles, it's not something I do very much. I'm not very good at it. I want to get better, but not there yet. So definitely 1 or 2 steps above beginner. Fortunately, the tools that exist in the market right now make it really easy to look like you're not a beginner. So that's helped me out quite a bit. The next tool, my wife got me an airbrush. So that's the next. That's the next thing. I think I'm going to have a ton of fun with that one, because that's not painting. That's doing something else, and that's something else. I think mechanically, and is just what I'm going to enjoy a lot more. It's going to give me the kind of control. I have, you know, shakier hands. I'm not the best at brush control. I'm not terrible. And after getting, you know, some not 30-cent brushes from Amazon. I actually have better brush control than I thought. That's good. But the airbrush is kind of like this next level thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Okay, what can I do with this dumb thing and where can I put it?
Yeah, I've heard. So I tried to get into airbrushing way a long time ago, and one, the tribal expertise wasn't out there, at least not necessarily in the wargaming communities. Sort of pre-social media, and two, it's a bit intense for capital cost, or at least that's what high school age me thought.
Yeah.
But my understanding now is, one, the knowledge is way easier to come by. Two, the paint formulations are way easier to come by, and three, it actually starts to pay for itself very quickly. One, in time, and two, in not having to buy rattle cans.
I was gonna say I live in Maryland, so there's about 3 days out of the year that you can prime outside.
Yeah,
because otherwise it's 85% humidity and your rattle can is going to, your model will die. It will scream, it will curse at you, and then it will die. So I tried gesso priming years ago to combat that. I didn't like it. It definitely wasn't something that I particularly enjoyed. So I kind of just grinned and bore it with rattle cans / maybe cracked my door in my basement open a little bit and sprayed inside like I shouldn't have been doing with painter's mask on, that kind of thing. Airbrush.
Your living room smells like aerosols for a month.
Thank God I have a basement that's very far away. But the airbrush is kind of really promising for that. I'm really looking forward to that. Just being able to prime, in a nice setup and just not have to deal with the rattle cans anymore.
I mean, the primer, first of all, airbrushing just in general has gone insane. Like you were saying back in the day, like you go to Adepticon or one of these big conventions where like the tools of the trade are kind of being shown on the floor. And the first time somebody showed me an airbrush, I was like, why would, like, models are this small, why would you even think about that? But wait, what if you could primer all of your Marines and put a base coat on them and a first highlight in under 30 minutes? And you're like, all right, I'm listening. I want some of my soul back and some of my life. I'll take some of that time. Go ahead and show it to me.
Right. And what if you could do it in that 30 minutes for dozens of models at a time?
Right. And you're just like, or just get like the perfect smooth color shift on a large model. And you're like, that's not possible. Don't just put away the wizard oil there. I will say that I had a horrific experience. I had a roommate way back this was in college, and I came in and it was immediately from the time I walked in the door, it just felt like burning. And I was like, what is happening? This hurts. And so like both me and the roommate get out of the house. We open all the windows and doors and put the fan on, and we're like, what the hell happened? He's like, I don't know. It was airbrushing. And then it felt like chemicals and my chest hurt. And I was like, what is happening? So finally the air clears and we're able to go back in the apartment. He had taken a bottle of Howard Hughes metallics, which are true metal metallic paints.
Oh,
it literally has lead warnings on the side of it, and he particleized lead-based paint.
Oh man, you guys war crimed your own house and like shaved a few IQ points.
I was like, how long you been in there? He's like, I don't know, I just started spraying and then I ran out because it was so cloudy and I couldn't.
Oh dear.
And like even with good ventilation, like I will say though, like Howard Hughes paints were just this beautiful color of like patinaed copper and stuff. Like I've never seen anything like it. But it turns out if you spray it through an airbrush, you get to go to the hospital. It comes with flavors you didn't even know.
No.
So,
man.
I see a question back there in our chat. I don't know how. I've never been a participant here, but it says, I want to know how the amount of time it took to finish a model back when you first started painting compared to now. So I would ask, you guys are relatively newer onto the painting scene in terms of like getting used to some of the tools and stuff. So like, I mean, you're probably the best example on how long it takes you to go from a model now versus back then.
I mean, I think when I was 10, my first Space Marine took me 2 hours and it looked like it took 5 minutes. But, just the manual dexterity and the brush control simply wasn't there. Honestly, so I'm too financially irresponsible to be financially irresponsible enough to pay someone to paint my minis. So I do everything myself. And honestly, at this point, there was a while where I flirted with competition, particularly in like my late teens and college years. I was starting to get good. And I hit like a reprioritization where it's like, okay, do I want to be good at this or do I want to be good at playing the game? I wound up choosing the game. And so now, I have similar kinds of rules to you where like, I'll do a model like this Madame Moriarty. And I target a, if it's a bulk model like a Marauder crew, I'll usually paint these guys in large groups. So I'll have like, 2 entire units lined up, all the duplicate sculpts next to each other. So I know I'm doing the same areas, in the same way. I won't miss things. My target is in aggregate about an hour per bulk model. Somebody like Moriarty, I typically go for hour and a half. And I do pick a number of techniques that, are deliberately designed around going fast. If it weren't for Warfare Weekend and the Iron Gauntlet or the WTC, I would probably avoid painting most of the time. And that's actually a question I have later for you, just about, staying true to the love of the craft. But for me, it's often a practical measure. And while I try and go fast, somewhere between hour and a half, heavy war beast, like 2 hours, a pig battle brig, for the rest of my life. I do try and make some very deliberate technical decisions to go for something that gives a nice effect in that time. So like, for me, like I mentioned, there was a deliberate life injunction where I'm deciding, okay, do I want to go for this or go for that? Well, I also don't want to have bad looking models. So my learning is mostly going to be focused on Master of 3 feet. All right, how about you, Chris? What's your time to trip through somebody like that Carver? Hold that guy up again too, by the way. I think everyone, the audience got a close in on my face, but I want them to really get that Carver.
My camera's not quite focusing, but there you go.
Keith, are you able to grab that for us? Oh, that's me again.
Not sure.
We're twisting on it. There we go. All right, give us an eyeful.
Yeah, there he is.
Oh wow.
That is actually like, focus or not. It's a good effect, particularly, I just want to draw attention to the cloak and the work you did back there. Like,
yeah, you can see it
that model has a great visual effect, essentially from any distance.
Yeah, back here you can see him a little bit. I gave him a pink nose too, which made me really happy. That guy took me 90 minutes.
Wow.
Start to finish. That was the first model I had painted in maybe 10 years. That's what Speed Paint 2.0 really helped with that quite a lot.
That was great.
And the slap chop method. I didn't count the dry brushing in that too much, but also the dry brushing doesn't take very long. It's very quick and you don't have to be super careful. If you want it to look better, you can be more careful. I wasn't being, because I've had Carver since 2011 or something like that, because it's a beautiful model. I didn't own any pigs but him. I just thought he was cool. And I was looking at him saying, I want to try these out. This looks like a really cool piece. Let me paint him up because I never have. Prior to that, the models that I painted before were for Protectorates and Temple Flame Guard, and each one of those probably took me 3 or 4 hours, but that was with P3 paints. And that was, like I said, I don't like painting, so that was pain. It hurt. It took forever, and they did not look that good. Like you could easily see there was no gradation between highlights and shadows, so it's just like these blocky chunk colors going from a dingy beige in the recesses to a bright white on the highlights. It looked like somebody took a acrylic marker and just kind of streaked down the robes. it looked good, but from 3 feet wasn't terrible. From 1 foot, not so great.
As a person who commiserates, like, I completely agree. Protector was my faction all through Mark 1 and Mark 2, so I totally get all of the detail in Protector. It was unnecessary.
Oh, yeah.
But we got one thing that no other faction got. All of our models, with the exception of I think the 3 dudes on Harbinger's base and Harbinger's face, no face.
No faces. Oh, painting heads was so easy. Just slap some gold, wash that stuff, a little highlight, you're done.
Yeah. Except that the rest of our army, if you painted it in color scheme, it was white.
Yep.
You're like,
yep. White can be absolute agony to paint.
Especially back before the paint ranges expanded. The white was white and red. The old reds were also an exercise in, well, they were hell.
When Protectorate came out as an army and people started playing Mark 1 Protectorate and saw white, I wish I could go back in time and to show people what the options for white paint were. It was literally GW white and GW white.
Yeah.
Until Privateer was like, hey, here's Morrow white, which laid down. It had viscosity, it had layers, and it laid smooth. It was like a coming of age story for the color white in miniature paint land.
Right.
So I had several of the OG P3s, and they were gorgeous. I did really like them. They went on super creamy and smooth, and the colors were just dramatic.
Vibrant.
They popped.
Yeah. Oh man, a P3 color. I haven't checked the new range to see if it's back, but my absolute favorite was Thrall Flesh.
It's back.
Oh, thank God. I've been like for years like color equivalent matching for when I was doing Retribution and then Khador. By the way, experiment with your paints, because like when I tested the scheme on Retribution and decided Khador was really the home for it, I do just solid base coat the entire model, battlefield brown, and then do a heavy dry brush of Guncore brown.
Yeah.
And then do a light dry brush of Thrall Flesh. And what this got you was a gradation of brown, rising to, this sort of faded green to like a stark green at edges. And it was a damn close imitation of like World War I, Russia, German era, like olive drab uniforms. And I could just get an entire model base coated like that. Like I base coat a Winter Corps infantryman, like, okay, pick out the reds, pick out the metals, pick out the base. Oh, I've got a jack. Pick out the reds, pick out the metals, do the Khador anvil in white and black, and like we're there real fast.
So when you sit down and paint, do you find yourself doing a lot more assembly line painting or individuals? Like
the way I paint, I tend to go for assembly line. If I'm doing somebody like a caster, one, their sculpt tends to have a lot more variation on it, or like a solo. It'll be more variation, more individualized details. So those are the ones where I'll sit down and have like, a real session with them. If I'm doing units or jacks, it does tend to be assembly line.
So one of the things that I like to try and tell new players when they're getting into like painting is to treat yourself. A lot of armies have a lot of models that are across things, especially skirmish games like War Machine, and even more so like 40K. And the way to do painting in large batches is to treat yourself. So you can take a unit of 5 guys, like we'll just say, I don't know, the boarding crew that's been popping up, and I'll paint those, and then I'll treat myself by doing something like a crit solo or something. I'll actually step out, if I can, out of the faction that I'm assembly line painting, because it keeps my interest fresh in what I'm working on. So I'll do 5 Trollbloods with rocks, chickens, ropes, bags, and 4 pans, 4 pots, 2 turtlenecks. Like, I don't know. Like, trolls are carrying everying. It's basically like a Macy's on 2 legs.
My old roommate used to call that circle garbage.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the Circle Ouroboros models, they've got like raggedy cloaks with like stitches, and there's a bunch of talismans with like little runes on tiny rocks, and the very most egregious model is the black-clad wayfarer, and he's got this big dramatic axe. It's like, a tree, but also inside the tree is this axe head with runes on it. And then if you look from the very top, there's a bird's nest with an egg in it.
Yeah.
And if you stop to paint every little detail on this circle model, you will go insane.
Yeah. I mean, I think Brine Bloods, the way I used to describe like any troll model from Mark II, especially, like it's like a 3-year-old who's telling you an adventure or what they want for Christmas. And then I want a dragon and a rock and a boat, and I want him to be on a beer keg, and I want him to have a hobo bundle and 2 sticks and a whole chicken, and he needs bubble gum, and like it just keeps going, and you're like, when does the model end? When does it end?
And now with this new line, we're going to add barnacles, which, if you are trying to go fast, are literal speed bumps on your ability to paint.
So 3D printing changed the dynamic of how a model comes. There are people who love the 3D printed models, and there are people who hate them more than anything. The downside, obviously, is sometimes they're a little more fragile, but you get more dynamic poses, you get cooler things. And I'll be honest, the one thing that I actually dislike about hobbying in general, I hate assembling models. Like when I do commission work for other people, I charge to assemble somebody's model. I don't like doing it. I do not hand me another unit of Silena and the Nis Hunters. I will just turn the box upside down into a trash can and hand it back to them. I don't want to assemble that.
I mean, good God. They were terrible.
So like 3D printed models, I mean, I think players, we had parts that were unassembled in like the Orgoth and the original Signar, and I think some of that stuff came unassembled.
Yeah, the first generation.
The Khador Winter Guards came in their original core box as 100% assembled. You literally had to pull them out of the box and stick them to a base. And the first time I was in the office and I opened it and put in I was like, because they were like, hey, we're going to have you do an insider. Here's what we want you to do. We want you to paint some stuff here. I pulled the models out of the box and I stuck them to bases. And I just started Lord of the Rings Extended Edition. I was like, all right, this is going to be an all-day event. I'm going to have to clean the models. I'm going to have to paint the models. I'm going to have to primer the models. I'm going to glue the models together. And then, like, Frodo hadn't even made it to, Rivendare. And I'm like, oh, well, that's different feeling.
Yeah. The first time you unroll the bubble foam and, Boris Yuk pops out, and then you glue him on the base, and you're like, are there any support struts left? No, I'm done. This is a game changer.
You're like, what? Which I got my afternoon back. That seems so weird. But like, the one thing that I dislike about that is because you're printing at a dynamic angle, molding is not something you have to consider. So like some things would be simplified. So like older models would have more 2D dynamics. Like a sword is very 2D dynamic. The model itself would be 2D dynamic. Now you have models like the Pig Cannon Crew, where if you look on the back of the model where the cannonballs would load, there is a gap with a rope that goes around the back of it. And no painter alive, as far as I know, can get their paintbrush in there to paint it. It doesn't exist. And you're like, I'm just going to spray this black or coat it black and hope people think it's a shadow, because I can't get in there to paint it. So there's no way to put any material in there. It's just primer colored.
It's really interesting how we really have run the full gamut, and how much of it is technologically mediated. Because I actually have a massive soft spot for the very early Mark I models. When it was all spin casting, when Privateer Press was like mostly a printing role-playing game company, like spinning this up for the first time,
the Witchfire
had to get things done very efficiently. Some of those old trenchers, if you look at them from a certain angle, they're essentially a flat plane. But they're gorgeous dynamic models. And you have gorgeous dynamic models today, but they're gorgeous and dynamic in very, very wildly different ways and demand different things of you as a hobbyist.
Yeah. I mean, the models that are flashing on the screen kind of like, there's a couple the older versions of models are some 2D dynamic things. So like you see things that are flat surfaces are a different way to paint than now the challenge. So like
Rock Bottom's a great example.
Yeah, very 2D. You're looking at one like kind of lighting source. It's easy to kind of see where lighting and shadow goes. And then you get to something that's in the newer world where you've got like the boarding party crew, or those are a bad example of Tron, because there's a lot of examples of 2D. But like the new Cricks, there's capes coming out of everywhere. There's details flowing. You're literally painting almost a 360 of light source that you have to incorporate, where it was a lot easier on those smaller 2D dynamic models as to where the light sources were coming from, so you could really exaggerate shadow.
Right. Yeah. Wait, so so here's something I've wanted to ask about, because being a master of 3 feet is there's a big difference between that and doing an official company blog where your painting is specifically being shouted out, and the real test is the camera. Like, I don't know, for anyone at home, if you've ever had a model that you're happy to show off, and you take a good quality camera like a modern smartphone or something, and just get in there and take some photos, you're like, yeah, this looks great. And then you're pouring it over and you're like, screwed that up, I screwed that up, I screwed that up. The camera is almost like this whole other beast that can put your model under so much scrutiny. As a craftsman, what's it take to go from 3 feet to 30 millimeters?
I will tell you right now, everything that you're seeing here, minus Rock Bottom, I think, and that Troll Blood and the boarding party crew, were shot with like a 6-year-old phone. Like, all the insider blogs were literally Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra. That's all it was, which was 20 years old. It's only recently that I've upgraded my phone into something new.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, like, back in the days when everybody was in the office and working in the studio, we had, I don't know what it cost back in the day, but like Privateer invested money into like DSLRs and high-tech camera gear. And like, you can really see it when like Matt DiPietro or a studio level painter or a professional competition level painter paints a model, and they take a box shot with a really high-end camera, and they go in and make box art, and they do a lot of stuff with it. Those models are on such another level. They're not masters of 3 feet. They're masters of 2 millimeters. Like, you're looking at an eyeball. If you've ever seen the old Retribution of Syra armies, if you look at the painting guides that are in the back of the books in Mark II, Meg Maples and Matt DiPietro go in and paint the color of the iris in the eye, which I've been painting for 20 plus years. I don't do that.
Right. Yeah, you're like, okay, vertical slit for the eye, and then horizontal slit of white, and we're done.
Exactly. And when you're talking about like the master of 3 feet, that's what it is. So like when I was creating like painting insiders for SFG or for Privateer, like I would try and put the model as far away as possible when I was taking those pictures intentionally, so that if you zoomed in, you couldn't see a lot of the detail intentionally. Like, I was trying to obfuscate as much of it, but also there was another reason. Like when I talked to Matt about when I came back in 2019, I think it was 2020, somewhere, whenever I came back to Privateer, and they were like, hey, we want somebody to kind of do hobby articles again. I was like, hey, I want to approach this a little bit differently, because like when Jordan Lamb or any of the professional painters were doing it, where they're like, hey, I'm a master of painting, they paint to try and lift people up, whereas I wanted to try and paint like a normal person in a game store would be like, hey, here's what I'm doing to do this thing, so come try and do it with me. Like, it wasn't like a, hey, here's how we do this thing in the studio, because at the time we were using Eric Swinson and Josh Berman to do almost all of the paint jobs, and they're on another level wizards. Like, they have their own YouTube channels and Patreons and whatnot, whereas I just wanted to paint like, hey, I'm a guy in a game store. If you ran into me at a convention, or if you ran into me at the local store, you could be like, hey, I want to know how you did this a little bit more. Can you go into a little more depth? Yeah, sure. I did this one thing with this one color, and if you blend it with this one ink, it comes out to look like this. So like, I was always open to as much feedback as possible. I got a lot of critical feedback, I guess would be the best way to put it. There was a guy who was from France. Anytime I'd post a hobby insider, no matter how good or bad I thought it was, he would just send me this wall of feedback of how to like take it to the next level. And the
players, by the way, are just like in terms of their techniques and like their aggregate painting level, just of the competitive players I've seen at the WTC are like, oh, this is your primary hobby. Whooping ass and taking names is just like, the next level down justification for doing this at such an intense level.
They're like, I don't know if you know this, we have this famous thing called the Louvre that has all this art in it, and like you could take their models in most cases and put them in the Louvre, and people be like, oh, that's really cool. Was that done in like the 14th century with oil paints, or like what was that? Like it just looks like a piece of actual art, and you're like, I dipped this in some color and I used a power drill to spin it dry, and it's green. It's green. It goes good.
Tabletop quality. You are not suited to serve me my cappuccino and cigarettes for breakfast.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're just like, I don't know what you did or how many babies you killed to come out with paint jobs that look that fantastic. But whatever unicorn you slaughtered, it looks good. It looks real good. Like I want to aspire to that someday.
Wait, so it's interesting your approach to the insiders is and I think John and I have talked about this before. Like if you're learning chess, like new player or newish player, like you're through your first couple hundred games, you don't want to seek out, a 2250 rated grandmaster to learn from. And even like a 1650 low rated master, like the comprehensibility of the game they're going to give you is so far above your like horizon for acquirable knowledge. I mean, I really admire the approach of saying like, okay, you're brand new to painting. You're like, you'll shake out to be 850 rated. I'm going to give you the 1250 close up to like, here's the next step to graduate to. And it's aspirational and it's presented as doable.
Yeah. I mean, I know that I'm not a master painter. Like I'm not going to win a Golden Demon at 20 plus years of painting. I know that there's a ceiling for what my skill set reflects. But I'm very happy to pick the guy who's climbing his first hill and be like, all right, you're almost to the top of this hill. All right, now look up there. That's Everest. That's where we're going to get you. We're going to get you there one step at a time. Let's go. We're going to walk this journey together. And when I run out of breath and die somewhere, you can just push me over into the pile with green shoes, and you can keep climbing Everest until you hit that summit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's being the green shoes of the hobby aspect is actually.
I know I'm not coming back down from the mountain. I'm not gonna make it, man. I'm not gonna make it. The Sherpas are gonna tell you there.
Charlie, I have to admit I'm a little disappointed. We have gone an hour and 40 minutes into this cast. Not one Vin Diesel quote from Fast and the Furious, really?
People change. They get a little different. I hadn't even thought about that.
You interrupted him halfway through the story to say it's all about family.
Yeah. It's all about family, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just waiting for it, but I've been listening this whole time. I'm working, but
I actually hadn't even thought about that because I haven't seen Josh Maxson in so long. There's no one to ride or die with. The times have changed.
Times have changed. I miss that guy. That guy was literally the anti-John. He was literally here. Do you know that we share a birthday, Maxon and I? We have the same birthday.
Really?
Exactly 5 years apart. And Maxon always used to say, yeah, God was like, oh, I have screwed up. I need to rebalance the universe. I need to put somebody awesome in place to balance out John, who is, well, what's the opposite of awesome? Not awesome, I guess. But anyway, yeah. No, that Maxon really felt like his job was to keep my ego in check, which, to be fair, is challenging. I'm a pretty confident guy, Also, along with not having an ego, I'm like the very best at humility.
Yeah, it's a real obstacle to balance both the most confident and the most humble man, apparently.
I agree.
Maxim failed in this job.
Yeah,
we need another nega duck in here.
I do admit that I do make it look easy, but yeah.
Good Lord.
It's actually, I can't help it. I'm sorry. See, you guys bring up Maxon, and look, this other side of me comes out. Maybe Maxon drew it out of me. Maybe it was Maxon's fault. That's the story I'm going with.
Wait,
anyway.
Now that you're back in the cast, I have a question. What is it like to be a beginner painter? What are your aspirations for your first model, John?
I gave up on painting so many times. Charlie saw some of my Charlie, I don't know if you remember the Menoth that I painted myself before you hooked me up and before I paid some people to paint some Menoth. But I literally went and got a spray can of paint of some sort of off-white, like Rust-Oleum paint that was thick. And then I dipped them in Minwax poly shades. Only I didn't understand that, like, I guess dipping, there's a bit of an art to it. I just read that you just dip it in there and then they look awesome.
Oh no!
Wait, so John's you're essentially one step under like World War I gas bombing your own house.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
With John's story, though, I have seen one of the most impressive speed painting things that I've ever witnessed. It was Adepticon 2010. Tyranids had come out, like they just done like a real. It might not have been 2010. It was one of the first Adepticons that I went to, though, and Tyranids had just come out with a new like package, and there were people playing it.
Oh no, it was 2010. I vividly remember this codex coming out. Yes.
So at the Adepticon Hotel, on my floor, there was a window at the end of the hall back at the west end, and it was shoved up. And what was happening is there were two guys sitting in chairs, clipping and building the models as fast as possible. There was another guy who was sitting there holding the models outside of the window, spraying them yellow, and then they'd bring the models back in. And then there was a guy who would attach them to a power drill, dip them in matte varnish, hold it out the window, and spin dry the model, and bring it back in, varnish it, spray it back out the window at full speed on the power drill, bring it back in. The hotel room smelled the worst I've ever smelled, but I kid you not, I watched these guys paint probably like 150 Tyranids in maybe an hour and 30 minutes. And they
must have been running a lot of Carnifexes and been very elite focused to get away with just 150.
Right? But I mean, like, it was just watching it. You get up to the hall, you're getting ready to put your War Machine models down, and you're like, what in the world is going on at the end of the hall? Why does it smell like a paint shop? And you like look out, and there's these three guys going as fast as they can, and they made it. They made their event with a fully painted, brand new, out of the box from like 20 minutes ago Tyranids, and they looked good from like the 30 feet, the Master of 3 feet. It had a basic color on it, highlights. It had been varnished, so it had that nice shading and wax to it. Like, still to this day, it sticks with me. Probably also because it killed like a bunch of brain cells, but.
What was the Keith model that who was it? It was like a Denny 2 or a Denny 1 that got based with coffee grounds and painted in like 20 minutes or something like that.
Oh God, I remember this.
Yeah, that did happen. I was there for that. Yeah. We actually had a lot of stories like that, to be honest. There was a lot of last minute painting, and this is why John hires commission painting. And if you saw my Duxma models, you'd be like, oh, that was probably a wise decision, John, because my models look good. They're not like gonna win any awards, but they're a great tabletop standard. And it's I'm gonna say this, you may disagree, but it is way more fun to play with painted models in 3D terrain. It just makes the game a different experience to me. It's a little more real, a little more real. It's a little less abstracted, which I really appreciate. And being the guy that like sort of made flat terrain predominant, I probably owe everyone an apology. So,
if you WTC 25 was like, or 24, I guess we're coming up on 25. WTC 24 was sort of a vindication of both worlds because they paired the 2D stuff with 3D toppers. Event that demands fully painted. Those were some of the most intense competitive games I've ever played, and they were some of the most immersive. And you know what? When that Iosian ruin is blocking the way, like, let's just shove this aside and use the footprint.
I like that. I think that's a really good compromise. Yeah. And actually, truthfully, if I was still running Muson Minis, the accessory
STLs
company
for toppers that perfectly fit.
Yep. We would have been developing STLs that we probably gave away with the flat terrain, which would have been really cool. So you could print your own, and then we probably would have printed them and sold them as well. I think that's a natural extension of that business. But by the way, anybody who's thinking about getting in the wargaming accessory business, juice is not worth the squeeze. I can confirm it is a lot of work, and it is. I would find it hard to believe that anybody scaled it much more than, or could scale it much more than I did Muse at the time. So yeah, there's more of that humility coming out. But yeah, it just was, we had so much equipment, we were making so much stuff, and there just wasn't a big enough market. Once you start to understand how actually small the market is, it gets a little scary. You're like, oh, I've captured a significant portion of this market. That's wild. Yeah. Anyway, so Charlie, I'm glad you're here. I wanted to really just take a second to thank you. You've given a ton of really good information and changed the tenor of this show for this episode quite a bit, which I really like. It allows us to hit a little different demographic and be a little more interesting in sort of not being just Alex and I grousing about bad models.
I mean, I'll take.
We had 20 minutes at the front of this, like big upping a bad model. Sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
Oh no, I was like, I'll take the compliment, but like when it comes to hobbying, unless I'm like talking about a very specific thing, I always feel like I'm just rambling about nothingness. Like I feel like the old man in a rocking chair telling war stories of before. Yeah, back in my day, before we had dry brushing, we had a single thing, Nolan oil. Kids today don't even know what they were missing out on.
Yeah, kids today don't even
on our belts because it was a style at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Kids these days don't even know how to troll their friends properly.
People today who don't know how to troll their friends properly with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good story. JRV, I 100% don't enter into best painted. I will accept an award if it's like a raffle for being fully painted, but I will not like, if I paid to have something painted, I won't even enter those competitions. I suppose I could. Yeah, but
I don't know how other people and painters feel about it, because like I've done a lot of commission painting. I do a lot of it currently, and there are times when people are like, "Oh, I don't want to enter, like have my army considered for best painted. I didn't paint a bunch of it." I'm like, why not? I don't mind. Like if you let's say bro. Yeah, like say John takes an army that I've painted and he wins best painted at a convention. I feel like that's flattery. One, it would never happen. I don't paint that well because I am not, whatever next skilled painter is out there. But the recognition, like when you see something like that happen, I always think it's kind of cool. I also always find it awesome when I see something that I've painted in the wild that I haven't seen in forever. Somebody actually, I know you're recently back into the game, John, but at one point, I think it was the first War Machine weekend that I was back at when I came back to the company in 2019 when I started working for Privateer Press. Somebody showed up with the Muse Crucible Guard.
Really?
Yeah, they just dropped it on the table, and I was like looking at it for a second, and I was like, I put that. And then I started getting the PTSD flashbacks of what painting orange, gray, and black and white was. And then I was like, oh, I know that. The cut goes the deepest. I know where that army's from.
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, no, actually it wasn't Crucible Guard though, right? It was Convergence.
Convergence. I don't know why it's a group was word. Yeah, it was Convergence.
But no, that's okay. But yeah, that was a cool scheme I came up with that you executed very well.
It looks so good on the tabletop.
Yep,
like I was
perfect.
I mean, I actually I have a lot of technical questions, but we
don't have time for a lot of technical questions. So what are you talking about?
I do have one here, which is sort of the convergence of the Muse on Minis Convergence army. If players are looking to really up their painting game, for me, getting to Master of 3 feet, one of the biggest resources I found is doing like quick color theory. Do you have like resources or recommendations around choosing schemes that pop?
Yes. There is actually an episode that Ninjon did for his podcast and YouTube painting channel where he uses a product called the Cube. There's a Cube in Cube 2. It is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen. And I know he's working on a product that's going to come out soon that's going to be similar to that, but actually focused on miniature gaming and miniature gaming colors. If you go watch that episode, and I wish I knew what it was, wish I knew the number, but what it is it's a limited color palette. And it's basically a great way to challenge yourself to use less colors to get more out of your model. And it is insane because I'd never tried anything like this. I'm going to find a picture real quick and send it to the chat because I used it after seeing this episode. I used it and was blown away by how much fun it was. So I did this Vrogger, which ended up inspiring my entire paint scheme around my Brine Bloods. Because I pulled a card out of one of those cubes, and it literally was like, use this blue, use this green, use this pink, and it was just insane how limited the palette was, but it challenged me to come up with something for a model. And basically, the way it works is you can only use those colors. You can add black and white to any of the colors that are there, so you get a little bit more of a saturated palette, but you're trying to stay with the 5 or 6 colors that appear on the card.
And Keith, go ahead and throw my share screen up. Sorry, go ahead, Charles.
Yeah. So I'll wait for it to pop up because it's a lot easier to explain once the image is like in there. So that Vrogger was done using a challenge card. Basically, it came with a pink on it. It came with a bluish green. It came with a blue, a dark blue, and then it came with a gray. That was all that was on the card. And so I literally went over to my paints and found the paint that was closest to the color on the card, and then that's all I could paint with on the palette. So since I didn't have any red, I didn't have any yellows or oranges, all I had was a pink. I was like, well, the pink will probably be like the fire glands and stuff like that. And the green made like a really cool belly color, and then the blue made a great body color. So, but it was colors that I would never have picked out in 1,000 years. Because when I sat down to do my Vrogger, I had already pulled out colors for fire. I pulled out some greens. I pulled out some, basic frog colors, right? And then I saw this Ninjon thing where he's like, yeah, take this card, try it, use an extremely limited color palette, and then see what you get out of it, and like challenge yourself a little bit. And that's what this Vrogger is entirely based off of, just one of those color palettes. I think you can even get it as an app for like iPads or iPhones and stuff, so you can just always have that like kind of visual thing going there. So when painters are like, hey, how can I try and take my painting to the next level? They usually tell, like, a lot of professional painters, and this is just something I'm literally plagiarizing from them because it was really something I did and worked so well, is to try a 5-color challenge where you take a model, you only give yourself 5 colors, and you try and paint a model. Now, obviously, organics are a little bit easier to work with when you have such a limited color palette. But if you try and do it with things that have metallics and armors on it, it really challenges you to try and find a way to come up with a good like saturation of colors and placement. But because you have such a limited palette, you're not reaching for 40 or 50 paints to get you to the end. It actually speeds your painting up, and sometimes you come up with some fantastic looking models that you never would have done on your own.
Right, yeah. You're almost sort of forced to do like the like a Samurai Jack like intense moment where the palette shifts and like everything's off, but you're like immediate visual impression.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's so much fun to try and challenge. Like I like painting, like just getting a chance to put some paint on a model, turn on something in the background to entertain myself, and then I'll just do this. And so like painting on the Vrogger to get that level is just, when I got done, I couldn't believe how good it looked. And so I started using it for the other things. I'm like, okay, well, this defines the color palette. I'm going to make all my fire bright pink and purples in my Brine Blood fire tongue. So like outside of even this model, the Batagabom,
with his sticks, and like he's got the purples casting light on himself.
I would never have thought in 1,000 years to like, I'm going to go do pink fire on any of my models. That was just not something in my book. So I got excited, and just like experimenting in color palettes outside of your normal thing is what allows you to go find like to challenge yourself, not only to find new colors, but like also new techniques of like painting.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh, I'm trying to get this this other image up, because this is this is another great application of the same principle on a very different model.
Yeah.
Like, look at this.
Again, I never would have thought to use pink fire in the model. It just wasn't something I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm gonna go do pink fire. And because of that Vrager, it influenced all the models out of the Brinebloods cadre.
Yeah. And this is another model too that, like, if you're trying to get your painting to, like, really get to the 3-foot level, like, there's so many different textures on this model, but you can often just achieve, like, the perfect visual effect by just toning it down and going, all right, we're going to have the stone gray,
Mhm.
and we're going to have the flames, and we're going to make those play off each other and just maximize the contours of this model, because these are also, like, striking visual profiles. But if you try and, like, paint the faces, and there's a billion little textures that'll tempt you, but if you just focus on making it striking, you can get astonishing results with a limited palette, and with I don't know. This is just great, and I love the learning from this technique set, that it's sort of spilling over here into a bunch of different applications.
Yeah, I did an insider that shows how I painted these step by step. I don't think it ever made it out into the public. It was written up at a weird time, so I think I had like 6 or 7 insiders that never got released.
Yeah.
Because Matt Wilson literally pulled me into his office on Wednesday and said, "Hey, by the way, you don't work here anymore on Friday." And I was like, "Wait,
my
what?
God.
What do you mean?" And he's like, "You'll get a call in like 20 minutes." And then on the call was Matt and Rich, and they were like, "Hey, we want you to come work for us. We've bought Privateer. Like, you're going to come work for us." And so those articles went into the meat grinder at SFG, and I just don't think they ever made it out.
Right. Yeah. And that whole transition period was, like, super awkward, even for model fulfillment and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about that someday. I don't know. It's a weird spot. I don't know which NDA covers it, or if an NDA covers that transitional period, because like I could tell you all kinds of fun stories from my days of Privateer transitioning to like now, and like it. I would say that one thing that people don't get to see is all the hard work that goes into making that transition team. The foothold and deficit the Privateer handed off to Steamforge Games was almost insurmountable. And if you would hear the physical numbers that went along with it, so for that company to take that ball and not only run with it but succeed with it, I know there are a lot of people that are frustrated because like shipping delays are out there, or people aren't getting the models 100%. And it's hard to say, hey, give them some time. They're still trying to catch up. If you only understood the deficit that they inherited to the success that they're running with, like, it's just insane. And then the game is seeing an incredible resurgence beyond what I think Privateer Scope or anybody else could see. So like for it to be where it is now, I'm so excited because a lot of people are starting to come out. I've seen some of the old guard even kind of like, we're the most irrelevant people. Like, John, no offense, buddy, we're the has-beens of the day. Like, we can come back and try and win some tournaments, but like the old guard is gone, and now there's a new guard in there. But it's great because like you go to conventions and shows and stuff, and you get to meet all these new people who are excited about the game. But it's so addicting that other people have started coming out of the woodwork. I've seen, Ryan Chiriboga started posting podcasts and doing things. It's like, where were you 4 or 5 years ago? Just all kinds of like the Texas meta is slowly rising is the rumor that I've heard, but I haven't seen anybody come back yet or post anything. But I'm looking forward to seeing like some of the old people. And then one of the most heartbreaking things about getting back in the game and working for the company was seeing the number of empty chairs around the table. Like when you'd go to Warfare Weekend or Adepticon and seeing how few of the old guard were still there, but then meeting some of the new ones. And then as we've gone forward over the last couple of years, the rooms are starting to get more and more packed, and more people are playing, and everybody's having a good time, and it's just so awesome to see that the game is still growing, and I really feel like that is because of SFG and all the work they're putting into it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's a fantastic note to carry us out on. Charles, thanks for coming on and sharing your passion for the hobby and your passion for this game and this community. It's really shining through, and I hope everyone who's been watching along at home, has a new stroke of inspiration to really chase it down.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. Feel free to have me back on. I'm happy to talk old, convention stories, painting.
Yeah.
Maybe sometime I'll come back on and we can do like a focus thing, or maybe when I get everything set up here, I'll come on and I can paint while we chat through stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm really glad you didn't tell some of the stories. So that's good.
I feel like at this point, some of the past just needs to be the past. If you were there to experience the legend, then that's the legend. The legends. Yeah.
The legends.
I mean, you brought up the Fast and the Furious thing, and I hadn't even thought about that until you said it. I was like, oh God, here comes an embarrassing story for me.
Oh, you're embarrassed by that now? Because I mean, your hairline's much closer to Vin Diesel's now than it was when you were originally doing that.
It is. It also doesn't help with this lighting, and I'm living in a heat box. We just moved to a new place. Yeah. There is no AC currently working in our place, so
ouch.
It is 86 in this room. So I've been podcasting from a sauna.
Yeah, we'll definitely tell some stories someday, and I can't believe, Charlie, you can't remember the Chinese restaurant that was right by the Des Moines store. When you would go in, you'd get a show because the lady would be like, "What you want?" And then you'd be like, "Well, I don't know. What do you have? Do you have a menu?" They're like, "Okay, you come back when you're ready." And she would just like yell at you. You'd be like, "What?" Okay, and then like you'd be trying to order, and then she'd pick up the phone. "Hello, what you want?" "No, okay, you call back when you know." Click, and then yeah, right back.
Oh yeah, that. Oh my gosh, there were so many crazy things.
I remember Brian Giese also telling stories about that place, and he was thoroughly convinced that it was a trap you took people to sabotage their play the next day.
Well, yeah, no. No, there's so many good old days. Like you could tell all kinds of funny stories about different things that are horrible. Like Big Blue almost breaking free when we were setting it up for lock and load and going down the street in Seattle and almost taking out a car.
Oh my God!
I was there for that. I was helping you guys unload that. Do you remember that?
Yeah. So like when the Big Blue is this old ironclad warjack that we used to set up for lock and load until it
was life size.
Yeah.
So it was massive.
We were taking it out of the box, and you had to unload it in parts on the street and put it together, and then kind of wheel it into this like special service elevator to get it up to the floor and lock and load when it was at the Red Lion. And it got loose for a second and like basically declared a charge into traffic almost. And like you're in a city like Seattle, and all the people are like looking out of the like their various like windows down at this like giant robot take off and like go after a Ford Durango or whatever. You're like, oh God. We can tell all kinds of fun stories. So you'll have to have me back on for a story sode and an actual painting session where I'll have to like bring some. Maybe I can reach out and steal something early from Steamforged Games, and I can come on and preview something. Or something. I don't know. We'll see it.
We absolutely will have to have you back on. And so it's been great to have you back on too for the first time in weeks. Glad real life was clear enough for you to join us.
Yeah, me too. Glad to be back.
So Charlie, before you go, I just wanted to let people just quickly know what kind of guy you are. So Charlie goes and he drives across the country, all bright-eyed. He's going to work at Privateer Press, and then he's no longer really going to be playing in competitive events. So he gifted me his entire Menoth army, and it was huge. It was a massive army. And that really allowed me to play in a lot of events because, you guys don't know this, most of you, but I had a house fire and lost a lot of my models. And so two things happened. One, Privateer Press painted me an entire Fiora army, which I think, Charlie, you gave them the list for, if I remember right? so they knew what to paint.
Yeah, I think I gave them one of your old faction lists for it.
Yeah, and so I had a competitive list, and then he gave me just a full Battlefront bag full of models, and like I didn't miss one event after having a house fire for not having models to play with, and it really that whole situation was very humbling, and it meant so much to me, and I've always appreciated you for it. You've always been a good friend, so people should know what an awesome person you are. That was pretty incredible.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That's heartwarming for sure.
Yeah, you're a good dude.
I also had a buddy of mine who his father he paid to pay his dad's medical bills. He sold off his retribution army. So before I left, I gave away my 2 armies. One to a person who lost the house, and the other one who literally sold the armies to pay for medical bills. And I was like, it's going to be okay. I'm sure I'll get plenty of stuff back from Privateer. I will say though that I have cursed myself by doing so. I have never had a fully painted army at any event anywhere since those days. So to break the curse, I'm going to challenge myself. Whatever army I lock in on for lock and load of this year, I want to show up fully painted. Which you guys are screwing me because we had that Orsus powwow session at the beginning, and now I'm like trying to do a 90-degree turn and take the exit for Orgoth.
So we have to have you on 2 weeks before lock and load, and then do another from the scrap heap for dark operations.
Oh, so I'll just be hanging from the ceiling with a dry brush. It's gonna be okay.
All right. Yeah, I wish I was going to be at Lock and Load this year, Charlie. We'd hang out. But anyway, thanks everyone for
Lock and Load.
Well,
hold on, I'm pausing the outro for that. How are you missing Lock and Load?
Well, I live in Maryland, and
you've got a Steamforged keynote, which they're going to announce and do cool stuff with, which I am so freaking excited about.
Charlie,
and the SFG guys are coming over. How are you not going to be there?
I know. As a matter of fact, Matt Hart said, if I came to Lock and Load, maybe we could set up shop and he'd do a show with us. But
I want to see people at Lock and Load this year. I'm calling you out. I think you've still got time.
Well, the thing is, I'm flying to the Philippines December 8th for a month, and it makes it really hard on the old vacation time. And my boss is cool, except that my boss doesn't work at the company I work for anymore. And my boss's boss was really cool, and I could have asked, but he also doesn't work at the company I work for anymore. And so now I report directly to a vice president who doesn't know me. And I'm going to tell him, well, you see, I know I'm going for a month to the Philippines and like not going to be generally available because the Philippines. I need to have like a 4-day weekend just 2 weeks before that because I'm a nerd. What can I say? You know what? I'm not sure how I can sell this. I don't think it's got to go.
John, I'm sorry. You were cutting in and out. You got really excited there. Did I hear you're going to be a Lock and Load? You're doing it?
I will see what I can do. Can somebody put me up in St. Louis for like the week beforehand? Because what I could do is I could drive out on a weekend, work all week from St. Louis, and then attend Lock and Load, and then drive back, maybe.
All I'm hearing is success right here.
Jeff, you're a man on the ground. Make it happen.
Yeah. All right. I will. I've actually already considering it.
We got him. Let's go. If you commit to being at Lock and Load, I will put a fully painted 100-point Orgoth army on the table in front of you.
In front of me? I'm not playing Orgoth. I'm going to play my Dusk.
No, I'm going to play the Orgoth. I owe you from the ass pounding of Fiora. Oops.
Oh, sorry. Wait, did you beat Fiora one time?
No, you crushed my soul. There's still my childhood is still on fire back there.
I was like, I don't think I ever lost to you.
Yeah, no, you wrecked me on another level.
Oh, and he's hardware muted himself again.
I would love to play a game with you, Charlie. I will see if I can make it work. My wife's best friend from the Philippines does live in St. Louis, so there is a chance. I'm telling you, there's a chance. Yeah,
we can have a farewell Fuzzy Taco invitational. We'll get the old guard out and play it off into the sunset. I've already been told that Fuzzy's Tacos no longer exists.
Actually, really?
Wait, so we're just down to St. Louis pizza now? That's a grim day.
I don't think Emo's even exists anymore.
Thank God.
Emo's is the best.
I'd rather starve than do Emo's.
No, Emo's is the best pizza
Emo's.
ever. How could you not like that? What is it that they put on that? It's not cheese. It's got to be like some type of cheese food. I don't know what it is, but it's like
it's basically a saltine that's the size of a pizza with ketchup and cheese whiz.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Emo's is great. Only the uncultured think that Emo's is terrible.
Oh, I'll cling to my heathen name as long as I live. As long as I outlive Emo's, I'm happy.
Yeah, there are restaurants in the area. For everyone out there, I've delayed signing off by like another 20 minutes.
It's all good.
Lock and Load's going to be a good time if you're there.
Yeah.
Please come out. It's in St. Louis area. It's at the Westport Chalet. I can never remember the name of that hotel.
Yeah, Westport Chalet.
Yeah, Westport Chalet. It's great. There's fun times. There's a bunch of fun restaurants around the little area. There's a real cool they took out Sadness Street, which is the thing that was like the iconic like falling apart story. Like you used to like go down Depression Avenue and take a left at Sadness Street. And you were at Warfare Weekend. Like all the restaurants were boarded up and closed, but they like completely like Sophia that entire area over. It got a completely new facelift. It's like a faux grass quad with this massive big screen. They were showing like the Polar Express last year. Like just a really cool area now. But
it's been a few years. I miss my Sadness Street.
What was the barbecue place we always went to?
There was a bunch of them. So
yeah, I know.
Are you talking about the one that also has the adjoining sweet shop that will take a piece of pie and blend it into a milkshake? That is Sugar Fire.
Sugar Fire Grill. That's it. Yeah, and the pecan pie made into a milkshake is delicious, by the way.
Yeah, if you're not signing up for Lock and Load, you're missing out.
It's diabetes in a cup. So anyway, all right. Love all of you guys. Thank you for hanging out. I mean, we could just hang out and have a good time. Charlie, I'm sorry I wasn't much on this episode, so I managed to duck you on a live stream episode too.
You're like, I'm not going to play games with you. I'm going to duck you at convention. Hey, I'm going to invite you on the podcast, and then I'm going to take off and leave somebody else to run the podcast. You ducked me on a podcast. That is like a Matt Damon and Jimmy Kimmel level troll I have not seen in a while. Hey, do you want to be a guest on my podcast? I'm not going to be there, but we'll have you on.
Well, baby steps. I introed us, and I'm going to outro us, so, almost. Also, to be honest, the discussion was probably better if I wasn't distracting us with stupid stories and my idiotic takes on painting. So,
hey, I don't know. We'll have you back. We'll try it again. We'll see if it happens.
No, I don't know. I don't know if I want to have another site completely melt.
All right, let's do our queen waves and get out of here. Grandpa needs his smokes.
Thanks, everyone. Well, we're going to go to a third hour because I haven't even looked. How many likes?
Are we at the third hour? Am I in danger? Do I
just kidding?
Another
Lock and Load. Let's roll.
So if we get to 500 subs, we're going to add a third hour or a European day. So I think we're at like 310. I don't know. I haven't looked for a little while. Let me look. Hold on. 1 second, guys. I'm going to look. Maybe. How about 325. Ha!
All right.
It's a good week.
I'm gonna need to sneak some equipment down to St. Louis somehow or another. So we can have that live show, and we'll kick that con attendance into subscribers.
Ooh.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Like I said, I think Matt Hart said he would do a show with us. Maybe.
Nice.
I could talk to him. Like I talked to him a bunch at Nova, and I talked to Rich some. Matt is my guy. I love that guy. Charlie, I'm sure you can tell lots of stories about Matt, but he's like a good dude.
I was only with the company for about a year. All I can say is like I signed up for the painting classes at Lock and Load so that I would intentionally get a chance to hang out with more Matt time, and also Matt's a good painter, so I'm excited to see maybe learn some techniques from him.
Yeah, I was bragging about Matt as a painter at Nova. This is a true story, just really quick. I was like, "Oh my God, Matt is such a good painter." I'm telling my wife, right? Like, Matt, show her your army, and he's like a little bit embarrassed. He looks real sheepish. He's like, "Well, this is like my traveling army, so it's and I look, and it's like literally 3-color airbrushed. I'm like, oh, those look nice. And then I'm explaining to my wife, well, that's not actually what good looks like. And Matt is very capable of painting very good models. And this other guy who's really nice, he's just like, well, I can show her a good model. And I'm like, okay. And he just pulls out, you know how painters are. They're just like, this is my pride and joy. Look at this. It was really cute. So anyway, it was Bodan, who's a pretty cool model, actually.
Yeah.
All right, John, you're giving away the milk for free. Let's get out of here. Thank you, everybody.
All right, everybody, 175 more likes, and we get a third hour.
Subs,
right.
not likes. Subs, not
Subs.
likes.
Subs. No, not likes. No, we'll have 1,000 likes on this video just to troll us. That's not good.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on this stream. Y'all have a good night. Queen Wave out.
Peace and love, everyone.